send a notice out. Okay, we got that. Now let's check, make sure we're streaming. Yep, it's live. Okay. Okay, everybody. Let's see. Okay, so I guess we'll start chatting in a second. Pick a song. And one of my favorites, Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakur by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'll get the guitar. All right. Oh Vaishnava Thakur Jarasandha Say Karuna Goriya Vaishnava Thakur Jarasandha Say Karuna Dia Pada Jaya Shodoya Maya Tomara Charanadori Dia Pada Jaya Shodoya Maya Tomara Charanadori Jaya Begatami Dosha Suni Jaya Guna Deo Say Jaya Begatami Jaya Dosha Suni Jaya Guna Deo Say Jaya Satsanga Deo Amare Osachi Sangiranse Jaya Satsanga Deo Amare Osachi Sangiranse Ekake Amara Oi Bolo Harinam Sankirtane Ekake Amara papore Shatabendo Dia Deo Krishna Namadane Dumi Kripakore Shatabendo Dia Deo Krishna Krishna say tomorrow Shanti te paru tomorrow Shanti Krishna say tomorrow Shanti te paru tomorrow Shanti Amito Gangala Krishna Krishna Holy Daitava Bache Bache Amito Gangala Krishna Krishna Holy Daitava Bache Bache Hey Vaishnavata Kuru Jarasandha Eda say Varuna Kuri Vaishnavata Kuru Jarasandha Eda say Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paramahamacharya also tell us that Shimad His Divine Grace Sapphire Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Majuram Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Vasudevi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Budle Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nivishesha Srinivadi Paschatade Jatarni. So I'm going to read the translation. O Venerable Vaishnava, O Ocean of Mercy, be merciful unto your servant. Give me the shade of your lotus feet and purify me. I hold on to your lotus feet. Teach me to control my 6 passions, rectify my 6 faults, bestow upon me the 6 qualities, and offer unto me the 6 kinds of holy association. I do not find the strength to carry on alone the Sankirtan of the holy name of Hari. Please bless me by giving me just 1 drop of faith with which to obtain the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours, you have the power to give him to me. I'm simply running behind you, shouting, Krishna, Krishna. All right, so we're going to continue reading the Krishna book. We're reading about the killing of Jarasandha, or actually the liberation of Jarasandha, which is the same thing. We're right in the middle of the chapter. So let us continue. Omagana Timidanda Shah Galanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Medikam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with a torch light of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay. So, let's share the screen, and we will be able to read together. All right. Whoops. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. So, what happened so far in this particular story is that Krishna just revealed to Jarasandha after he, Bhimsena and Arjuna, approached Jarasandha dressed as brahmanas, and Jarasandha sort of figured out they weren't brahmanas because they had the markings of the bows on their hands and they had muscles and all that other nice stuff. But Krishna said, actually, my name is Krishna, your old enemy. And as we see here, we read this yesterday, and with me is Bhimsena and Arjuna. So, that's where we left off. Okay. When Lord Krishna disclosed their disguise, King Jarasandha laughed very loudly, and then in great anger and grave voice, he exclaimed, "You fools, if you want to fight with me, I immediately grant your request. But Krishna, I know that you're a coward. I refuse to fight with you because you become very confused when you face me in fighting. Out of fear of me, you left your own city, Mathura, and now have taken shelter within the sea." That's Dwarka, of course. "Therefore, I must refuse to fight with you. As far as Arjuna is concerned, I know that he is younger than me and is not an equal fighter. I refuse to fight with him because he is not in any way an equal competitor. But as far as Bhimsena is concerned, I think he is a suitable competitor to fight with me." After speaking in this way, King Jarasandha immediately handed a very heavy club to Bhimsena. He himself took another, and all of them went outside the city walls to fight. Now, one thing you'll notice here, this is very chivalrous. In other words, Jarasandha wanted to fight someone equal to himself because he wanted a good fight. Not that he was simply interested in killing everybody, but he was interested in the chivalry of having a good fight and fighting with an equal personality. It's interesting, because that's the enjoyment the Kshatriyas had, and also King Jarasandha wasn't exactly a Kshatriya, but he had a lot of Kshatriya mentality in him. He was actually a demoniac Kshatriya. Bhimsena and King Jarasandha actually was the demon Viprachiti, who was mentioned in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, took birth as Jarasandha. And Jarasandha's friend, Kamsa, was Kalanemi in his past life. Bhimsena and King Jarasandha engaged themselves in fighting, and with their respective clubs, which were as strong as thunderbolts, they began to strike each other very severely, both of them being eager to fight. They were both expert fighters with clubs, and their techniques of striking each other were so beautiful that they appeared to be two dramatic artists dancing on a stage. When the clubs of Jarasandha and Bhimsena loudly collided, the impact sounded like that of the big tusks of two fighting elephants, or like a thunderbolt in a flashing electrical storm. Oh, no. When two elephants fight together in a sugarcane field, each of them snatches a stick of sugarcane, holds it tightly in his trunk, and strikes the other. At that time, the sugarcane becomes smashed by such heavy striking. Similarly, when Bhimsena and Jarasandha were heavily striking each other with their clubs in different parts of their bodies, namely the shoulders, arms, collarbone, chest, thighs, waist, and legs, their clubs were torn to pieces. In this way, all the clubs used by Jarasandha and Bhimsena became ruined, and so the two enemies prepared to fight with their strong-fisted hands. Jarasandha and Bhimsena were very angry, and they began to smash each other with their fists. The striking of their fists sounded like the striking of iron bars, or like the sound of thunderbolts, and the two warriors appeared to be like two elephants fighting. Neither was able to defeat the other, however, for both were expert in fighting, and they were of equal strength, and their fighting techniques were also equal. Neither Jarasandha or Bhimasena became fatigued or defeated in the fighting, although they struck each other continuously. At the end of each day's fighting, they lived at night as friends in Jarasandha's palace, and the next day they fought again. In this way, they passed 27 days in fighting. So this is also a very chivalrous thing, that they only fought on during specific times of the day. Otherwise, they would just all eat together and just joke and everything at night. Oh my God, pretty amazing. On the 28th day, Bhimasena told Krishna, "My dear Krishna, I must frankly admit that I cannot conquer Jarasandha." Lord Krishna, however, knew the mystery of Jarasandha's birth. Jarasandha had been born in two different parts from two different mothers. When his father saw that the baby was useless, he threw the two parts into the forest. Actually, the reason that Jarasandha was born in two parts was that Jarasandha's father really wanted a son. He couldn't have a son. He had two wives. And so he asked a sage to perform a sacrifice, and the sage actually gave him some kheer. So instead of giving the kheer to one wife, he gave the kheer, half of the kheer to one wife and half the kheer to the other wife. So therefore, each wife gave birth to a half a baby. And that's the mystery behind that. Completely down the middle, split down the middle, one lung, another lung, half a brain, etc. They were that's the parts of the body, were later found by a witch named Jada, which means old age, who was skilled in the black arts. She managed to join the two parts of the baby from top to bottom. In other words, she was interested in eating. She saw all this human flesh, and she was thinking, delicious. And she started to see that they were two parts of the same person. So she just played around with it and put them together. And when she put the two parts together, this baby started moving. And when the baby started moving, she understood, oh, this is the king's baby. The king will reward me. And so she brought this complete baby to the king. And the king was so pleased that he named his kid Jarasandha. That means the person who was put together by Jarasandha. It means put together by Jara. So anyway, knowing this, Lord Krishna therefore also knew how to kill him. He hinted to Bhima, saying that since Jarasandha had been brought to life by the joining of two parts of the body, he could be killed by the separation of these two parts. Thus Lord Krishna transferred his power into the body of Bhimasena and informed him of the device by which Jarasandha could be killed. Lord Krishna broke off a twig from a tree, took it in his hand, and bifurcated it. In other words, the tree with like two little branches or two little parts, and he pulled it apart so it actually was divided in half. So when Bhimasena saw that, he understood how to kill Jarasandha. In this way, he hinted to Bhimasena how Jarasandha could be killed. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is omnipotent, and if he wants to kill someone, no one can save that person. Similarly, if he wants to save someone, no one can kill him. Immediately, informed by the hints of Lord Krishna, Bhimasena immediately took hold of Jarasandha's legs and threw him to the ground. When Jarasandha fell, Bhimasena immediately pressed one of Jarasandha's legs to the ground and took hold of the other leg with his two hands. Catching Jarasandha in this way, he tore his body in two from the anus up to the head. Hoo-hoo! As an elephant breaks the branches of a tree in two, Bhimasena separated the body of Jarasandha. The audience standing nearby saw that Jarasandha's body was now divided into two halves, so that each half had one leg, one thigh, one testicle, half a backbone, half a chest, one collarbone, oh my God, one arm, one eye, one ear, and half a face. As soon as the news of Jarasandha's death was announced, all the citizens of Magadha began to cry, "Alas, alas!" while Lord Krishna and Arjuna embraced Bhimasena to congratulate him. Although Jarasandha was killed, neither Krishna nor the two Pandava brothers made a claim on the throne. Their purpose in killing Jarasandha was to stop him from creating disturbance to the proper discharge of world peace. A demon always creates disturbances, whereas a demigod always tries to keep peace in the world. The mission of Lord Krishna is to protect the righteous and kill the demons who disturb a peaceful situation. Therefore, Lord Krishna immediately called for the son of Jarasandha, whose name was Sahadev. And with due ritualistic ceremonies, the Lord asked him to occupy the seat of his father and reign over the kingdom peacefully. Lord Krishna is the master of the whole cosmic creation, and he wants everyone to live peacefully and execute Krishna consciousness. After installing Sahadeva on the throne, he released all the kings and princes who had been imprisoned unnecessarily by Jarasandha. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 72nd chapter of Krishna, the liberation of King Jarasandha. So remember, there's only 90 chapters in the Krishna book. Actually, the longest chapter is to come, which is the prayers to the personified Vedas. That's going to take several days to read because it's a very philosophical chapter. Okay, next chapter is 73, which is entitled Lord Krishna Returns to the City of Hastinapura. The kings and princes released by Lord Krishna after the death of Jarasandha were rulers of different parts of the world. Jarasandha was so powerful in military strength that he had conquered all these princes and kings, numbering 20,800. Wow. They were all incarcerated within a mountain cave, especially constructed as a fort, and for a long time they were kept in that situation. They all looked very unhappy, their garments were niggardly, and their faces were almost dried up for want of bodily care. They were very weak due to hunger, and their faces had lost all beauty and luster. The king's long imprisonment had caused every part of their bodies to become slack and invalid. However, because in that miserable condition they had the opportunity to think about Lord Krishna, they immediately saw him now as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. They saw that the color of the transcendental body of Lord Krishna resembled the hue of a newly arrived cloud in the sky. He appeared before them nicely covered by yellow silken garments with 4 hands like Vishnu, and carrying the different symbols of the club, the conch shell, the disc, and the lotus flower. His chest was marked with a golden line, and the nipples on his chest appeared like the whorls of lotus flowers. His eyes appeared to spread like the petals of a lotus, and his smiling face exhibited the symbol of eternal peace and prosperity. He wore glittering shark-shaped earrings, and his helmet was bedecked with valuable jewels. The Lord's necklace of pearls and bangles and bracelets, nicely situated on his body, all shone with a transcendental beauty. The Kaustuba jewel hanging on his chest glittered with great luster, and the Lord wore a beautiful flower garland. After so much distress, when the kings and princes saw Lord Krishna with his beautiful transcendental features, they looked upon him to their heart's content, as if drinking nectar through their eyes, licking his body with their tongues, smelling the aroma of his body with their noses, and embracing him with their arms. Just by the dint of being in front of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all reactions to their sinful activities were washed away. Therefore, without reservation, they surrendered themselves at the lotus feet of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that unless one is freed from all sinful reactions, one cannot fully surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. All the princes who saw Lord Krishna forgot all their past tribulations. With folded hands and with great devotion, they offered prayers to Lord Krishna as follows. Now here's the prayers of the kings. Dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Master of all demigods, you can immediately remove all your devotees' pangs, because your devotees are fully surrendered unto you. Our dear Lord Krishna, O dear Lord Krishna, O eternal deity of transcendental bliss and knowledge, you are imperishable, and we offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. It is by your causeless mercy that we have been released from the imprisonment of Jarasandha, but now we pray that you release us from imprisonment within material existence. Your illusory energy Please stop our continuous cycle of birth and death. We now have sufficient experience of the miserable material life in which we are fully absorbed, and having tasted its bitterness, we have come to take shelter under your lotus feet. Therefore, please give us your protection, dear Lord. O killer of demon Madhu, we can now clearly see that Jarasandha was not at fault in the least. It is actually by your causeless mercy that we were bereft of our kingdoms, for we were very proud of calling ourselves rulers and kings. So, of course, this is an illustration of that interesting verse in the Bhagavatam, Yashaham Anagurname Harishe Tantanamishanai. For those who I especially favor, I put them in these circumstances. So basically, they lose their position, and their friends and relatives reject them, and they have to take shelter in Krishna's name. A ruler or a king who becomes too much puffed up with false prestige and power gets no opportunity to understand his real constitutional position and eternal life. Under the influence of your illusory energy, such foolish so-called ruler or king becomes falsely proud of his position, just like a foolish person who considers a mirage in the desert a reservoir of water. Foolish persons think that their material possessions will give them protection. Engaged in sense gratification, they falsely accept this material world as a place of eternal enjoyment. O Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, we must admit that before this we were puffed up with our material opulences. It was as if we were intoxicated, because we were all envious and wanted to conquer one another. We all engaged in fighting for supremacy, even at the cost of sacrificing the lives of many citizens. Isn't this what we see right now with the so-called leaders of this world? I'm not going to cite any particular examples. This is the disease of political power. As soon as a king becomes rich in material opulences, he wants to dominate other nations by military aggression. Similarly, mercantile men want to monopolize a certain type of business and control other mercantile groups. Impelled by false prestige and infatuated by material opulences, human society, instead of striving for Krishna consciousness, creates havoc and disrupts peaceful living. Thus men forget the real purpose of life, to attain the favor of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The kings continued, O Lord, we are simply engaged in the abominable task of killing citizens and alluring them to be unnecessarily killed, just to satisfy our political whims. Doesn't that sound very familiar to what's going on today? We did not consider that your lordship is always present before us in the form of cruel death. We were so foolish that we became the cause of death for others, forgetting our own impending death. But, dear Lord, the force of the time element, which is your representative, is certainly insurmountable. The time element is so strong that no one can escape its influence. Therefore, we have received the reactions of our atrocious activities, and we are now bereft of all opulences and stand before you like street beggars. In other words, they're not blaming Jarasandha. It's a very interesting point about devotees. Something happens to them. They don't blame the immediate person who did that. They understand. They don't blame Krishna either. They understand it's Krishna's arrangement. It's not a question of blame. And Krishna's arrangement for their own purification. So, of course, that doesn't mean that one doesn't take some precautions or remedial measures if one is able to. We consider our position your causeless, unalloyed mercy upon us, because now we can understand that we were falsely proud and that our material opulences could be withdrawn from us within a second by your will. By your causeless mercy only, we are now able to think of your lotus feet. This is our greatest gain. Dear Lord, everyone knows that the body is a breeding ground of disease. Now we are quite aged, and instead of being proud of our bodily strength, we are getting weaker day by day. Tell me all about it. We are no longer interested in sense gratification or the false happiness derived through the material body. By your grace, we have now come to the conclusion that hankering after such material happiness is just like searching for water in a desert mirage. We are no longer interested in the results of our pious activities, such as performing great sacrifices to be elevated to the heavenly planets. We now understand that such elevation to a higher material standard may sound very relishable, but actually there cannot be any happiness within this material world. We pray for your lordship to favor us by instructing us how to engage in the transcendental loving service at your lotus feet, so that we may never forget our eternal relationship with your Lordship. We do not want liberation from the entanglement of material existence. By your will, we may take birth in any species of life. It does not matter. We simply pray that we never forget your lotus feet under any circumstances. Dear Lord, we now surrender unto your lotus feet by offering our respectful obeisances unto you, because you are the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. You are the supersoul in everyone's heart, and you are Lord Hari, who can take away all miserable conditions of material existence. Dear Lord, your name is Govinda, the reservoir of all pleasure, because one who is engaged in satisfying your senses satisfies his own senses automatically. Dear Lord, you are ever famous, for you can put an end to all the miseries of your devotees. Please therefore accept us as your surrendered servants. After hearing the prayers of the kings released from the prison of Jarasandha, Lord Krishna, who is always the protector of surrendered souls, and the ocean of mercy for the devotees, replied to them as follows in his sweet transcendental voice, which was grave and full of meaning. My dear kings, he said, I bestow upon you my blessings. From this day forth, you'll be attached to my devotional service without fail. I give you this benediction as you have desired. You may know from me that I am always sitting within your hearts as the super soul, and because you have now turned your faces toward me, I, as master of everyone, shall always give you good counsel, so that you may never forget me, and so that gradually you will come back home, back to Godhead. My dear kings, your decision to give up all conceptions of material enjoyment and turn instead toward my devotional service is factually the symptom of your good fortune. Henceforward, you will always be blessed with blissful life. I confirm that all you have spoken about me in your prayers is factual. It is a fact that the materially opulent position of one who is not fully Krishna conscious is the cause of his downfall and is becoming a victim of the illusory energy. In the past, there were many rebellious kings such as Hoya, Nahusha, Vena, Rava, and Narakasura. Some of them were demigods and some of them were demons. But because of their false perception of their positions, they fell from their exalted posts, and thus they no longer remained kings of their respective kingdoms and were lost in the violence of abominable conditioned life. Every one of you must understand that anything material has its starting point, growth, maintenance, expansion, deterioration, and finally disappearance. All material bodies are subject to these 6 conditions, and any relative acquisitions accumulated by this body are definitely subjected to the final destruction. So, of course, these are the 6 symptoms of a living entity. There's birth, there's growth, there's maintenance, byproducts, which means babies, there's dissolution, and death. Therefore, no one should be attached to perishable things. As long as one is within this material body, he should be very cautious in worldly dealings. The most perfect way of life in this material world is simply to be devoted to my transcendental loving service and to execute honestly the prescribed duties of one's particular position. As far as you are concerned, you all belong to Kshatriya families. Therefore, you should live honestly according to prescribed duties befitting the royal order, and make your citizens happy in all respects. Keep to the standard of Kshatriya life. Do not beget children out of sense gratification, but simply take charge of the welfare of people in general. Everyone takes birth in this material world in continuation of his previous life, and thus he is subject to the stringent laws of nature, such as birth and death, distress and happiness, profit and loss. One should not be disturbed by duality, but should always be fixed in my devotional service, and thus remain balanced in mind and satisfied in all circumstances, considering all things to be given by me. Very good instruction. Thus one can live a very happy and peaceful life, even within this material condition. In other words, one should actually be callous to the material body and its byproducts, and should be unaffected by them. One should remain fully satisfied in the interests of the spirit soul and engage in the service of the Supersoul. One should engage his mind only in thinking of me. One should simply become my devotee. One should simply worship me. And one should offer his respectful obeisances unto me alone. Sounds like Bhagavad Gita. Man manava bhavamat bhakto madhyashi mam namaskuru. Vaishyaste sacham te pratijane priyosi me. Sorry. In this way, one can cross over the ocean of nescience very easily, and at the end come back to me. In conclusion, your lives should constantly be engaged in my service. After delivering his instructions to the kings and princes, Lord Krishna immediately arranged for their comfort and asked many servants and maidservants to take care of them. Lord Krishna requested Sahadev, the son of King Jarasandha, to supply all necessities to the kings and show them all respects and honor. In pursuance of the order of Lord Krishna, Sahadev offered them all honor and presented them with ornaments, garments, garlands, and other paraphernalia. After taking their baths and dressing very nicely, the kings appeared happy and gentle. Then they were supplied nice food. Lord Krishna supplied everything for their comfort as befitting their royal positions. Since the kings were so mercifully treated by Lord Krishna, they felt great happiness, and their bright faces appeared like the stars in the sky after the end of the rainy season. All nicely dressed and ornamented, their earrings glittering, they were then seated on chariots bedecked with gold and jewels and drawn by decorated horses. After seeing that each of them was taken care of, Lord Krishna in a sweet voice asked them to return to their respective kingdoms. By his liberal behavior, unparalleled in the history of the world, Lord Krishna released all the kings who had been in the clutches of Jarasandha, and the kings, being fully satisfied, began to chant his holy name, think of his holy form, and glorify his transcendental pastimes as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The citizens of their kingdoms were greatly pleased to see them return, and when they heard of the kind dealings of Lord Krishna, they were all very happy. The kings began to manage the affairs of their kingdoms in accordance with the instructions of Lord Krishna, and all those kings and their subjects passed their days very happily. This is a vivid example of a Krishna-conscious society. If the people of the world, taking into account their respective material qualities, divide the whole society into 4 orders for material progress and 4 orders for spiritual progress, of course, Varnashram. Centering these orders on Krishna and following the instructions of Krishna, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the entire human society will undoubtedly be happy. This is the lesson we have to take from this incident. So, Varnashram, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, that's the ashrams, and then the varnas is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. According to someone's nature, not according to one's birth. After thus causing the annihilation of Jarasandha by Bhimasena, and after being properly honored by Sahadev, the son of Jarasandha, Lord Krishna, accompanied by Bhimasena and Arjuna, returned to the city of Hastinapura. When they reached the precincts of Hastinapura, they blew their respective conch shells, and by hearing the sound vibrations and understanding who was arriving, everyone immediately became cheerful. But the enemies of Krishna, upon hearing the conch shells, were very sorry. The citizens of Indraprastha felt their hearts become joyful simply by hearing the vibration of Krishna's conch shell, because they could understand that Jarasandha had been killed. Now the performance of the Rajasuya sacrifice by King Yudhisthira was almost certain. Bhimasena, Arjuna, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, arrived before King Yudhisthira and offered their respects to the king. King Yudhisthira attentively heard the narration of the killing of Jarasandha and the setting free of the kings. He also heard of the tactics adopted by Krishna to kill Jarasandha. The king was naturally affectionate toward Krishna, but after hearing the story, he became even more bound to him in love. Tears of ecstasy glided from his eyes, and he was so stunned that he was almost unable to speak. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 73rd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna returns to the city of Hastinapura. Now, several things here we can understand. Krishna is actually facilitating his devotees, also establishing religious principles, killing the miscreants, and he's also taking away the material attachments of his devotees, specifically those kings, so that they can actually become more advanced in Krishna consciousness. So, I think we have time to start chapter 74. That's pretty good. 74 is entitled The Deliverance of Shishupala. Actually, maybe before we start this chapter, I can tell the whole story of Shishupala. Okay, and then we can start the chapter mark. Okay, Shishupala. Shishupala was Krishna's cousin. Shishupala was Krishna's cousin. So what happened is that after Shishupala was born, or when he was born with 4 arms and 3 eyes. Oh my God. And his parents were necessarily a little upset, but not that upset. But then they heard a voice from the sky. And that voice from the sky stated that whoever, upon holding little baby Shishupal, will cause the extra arms, the extra 2 arms, and the eye to disappear, will be the one who kills Shishupal. So Shishupal's mother, upon hearing this, got really upset, anxiety. And so she called for different kings, and they all picked up Shishupal. Nothing happened. Shishupal maintained his 4 arms and 3 eyes. And so she was thinking, who is the one who is going to kill little baby Shishupal? Okay, so then, eventually Shishupal's cousin, elder cousin, that's Krishna, came. And Krishna picked up little baby Shishupal, Rakabai, Shishupal, etc. And the arms fell off, the extra 2 arms, and the 3rd eye disappeared. And so Shishupal's mother was complete anxiety. She was crying. She was thinking, oh my God, please don't kill my son, please. Give me the benediction that you won't kill my little baby. And Krishna said, well, I'll give you a benediction. I mean, it's not absolute that I won't kill him, but I will actually forgive him for up to 100 offenses that he makes. But after that, it's going to be too much, and I guess I may have to kill him if he makes more than 100. And Shishupal's mother was thinking, this is right. I mean, who's going to make 100 offenses against Krishna? Maybe he'll make 1 or 2, have little arguments or something like that. So this is the background of Shishupal. Shishupal, of course, was very upset with Krishna for a variety of reasons, as we read previously. When Krishna married Rukmini, Rukmini was actually promised to Shishupal by Rukmi, who was Rukmini's brother. And so when Krishna came to Vidarbha, where Rukmini was, Krishna kidnapped her right after she paid obeisances to the deity Durga. And Shishupal just lost the opportunity to marry her. Of course, he couldn't have married Rukmini because Rukmini is actually the goddess of fortune. So basically, from that instance and many other instances, Shishupal became really upset with Krishna. He was obsessed with Krishna, with hate towards Krishna. And at the same time, here's another point about Shishupal. Shishupal was one of the 2 gatekeepers, that's Jaya and Vijay, who were cursed to come down to this earth planet to act as the Lord's enemies, so that the Lord could actually have particular pastimes with his enemies who were actually his devotees. So, of course, the other personalities who they appeared as were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and then Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and finally Shishupala and Dantavakra. And in some places it's stated that after they took those three births as demons, uh, they actually appeared as Jagai and Madai, who originally started being demoniac after they were contaminated. They were born in Brahmin families. But then later on, Jagai and Madai became great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead after Lord Nityananda forgave them. And they joined the devotees in Navadvip and joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sankirtan movement. So that's a little information about Shishupal. So he was meant to be the enemy of Krishna, so that Krishna could enact this particular pastime, which we're going to read about in this chapter, starting tomorrow. So this, I wanted to start that chapter tomorrow. Such an interesting chapter. Okay, and so it's time. So we'll stop sharing, and we will allow all you nice Prabhus and Prabhis, and whatever you are, devotees, to ask questions. So I guess Krishna Priya Devi Dasi has a question. So what's the question? You're going to unmute yourself.
Jai Shloka, please accept my obeisances. So I was noticing that, like in this particular pastime, after Jarasandha was killed by Krishna, then Krishna put his son, Sahadev, to rule. And it seems that he didn't feel any anger or vengeance towards Krishna for having killed his father, that he just went on with doing what was necessary, and even to the point of taking good care of the kings. And we see in other pastimes, like let's say Hiranyakasipu or Naksha, when someone was killed by Krishna, they had this big anger towards them.
Yeah, because they were demons. But somehow or the Sahadev wasn't a demon, and also was the chivalry thing. If you defeated someone, you'd respect that. I mean, it was expected, amongst kings. Like Prabhupada comments, and it's in the Krishna book, that even at marriages, it was expected there'd be some fighting and people would be killed. It was like part of life.
Right, and it wasn't done in an underhand way.
No, it wasn't done in an underhanded way. It was actually a very chivalrous way. So you sort of expected it, Like Prabhupada said, that even in marriages, you sort of expected some people would be killed. I mean, look what happened at when Balaram had to kill Rukmi at the marriage.
And that was really heavy.
That was heavy, and Prabhupada said this is just like part of life for Kshatriyas. It's a chivalrous thing. It's hard to imagine. But anyway, Sahadev obviously understood the culture. And even though he may have been upset that his father was killed, he still adhered to the culture. And he was happy that Lord Krishna didn't want to take over his kingdom. Because usually someone kills someone else to take over the kingdom. Just like we see in the world today. There's a lot of killing going on so people can take over the land. Or
right.
particular country. But the Kshatriyas, they just did this basically because out of sport. It's like losing, it's hard to imagine from my standpoint. It's like, you lose a soccer game. Of course, nowadays in certain countries, if you lose a soccer game, it's killing.
Right.
You hear about those riots, people really get into that, especially in South America and other places. There's soccer riots. And even in the UK, I think they've had things with Manchester United. Stuff
With
like
cricket riots.
Yeah, cricket riots. And so, it's just part of sporting activities. It's part of sporting activities. I mean, even like in American football, everybody's getting brain damaged. It's just like, it's to be expected. You have
And
to
then
tackle.
Heard it, sometimes we see that the father might be demoniac, but the son's not, that he can be a
Yeah,
proper king.
yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And Jarasandha, I mean, he was demoniac, but I wouldn't say. I mean, he was pretty bad, but but at least he was Vedic.
He had a lot of love for the Brahmins.
Yeah, he had love for the Brahmins because he knew he can get stuff if he worshipped them. But he was Vedic, you know. He just observed the etiquette of Vedic society. He was a civilized demon. I mean, you find this in many stories about demons. I mean, Bali Maharaj was acting, you know, once as demoniacally because he killed him. He didn't kill Indra, he kicked Indra out of the heavenly planets. But he was extremely Vedic during sacrifices, respecting brahmanas. I mean, these were cultured people, not like your leaders today who were simply uncultured slobs. You know, they had really refined people. So Jarasandha is, you know, sometimes he's depicted, like if you watch the Mahabharata movie, he's sort of like depicted as like a thug. I mean, obviously he wasn't a thug, he was going to kill all the kings, but, you know, it's just some uncouth slob, basically. And it's not that he was like that. He was actually, you know, demoniacally couth. That's funny. All right, so here's another question in the chat window. Hare Krishna Gurudev. Uh, one can fully actually spelled through, but one cannot fully surrender into Krishna unless one's past sinful reactions are fully eradicated. So for practicing devotees, is one unable to surrender fully? Is it because of past sinful reactions? How do we understand this? Well, it's not only because of past sinful reactions, your desire, you know, because that past sinful reactions are eradicated by the chanting of the Lord's holy names. That's even by Namabas chanting, then all the past sinful reactions are eradicated. But you also have to stop present sinful activities. This verse that Prabhupada made reference to in the Gita, Yesham Twandakatam Pam Pam Yananam Punyakarnam Divandamo and Mukta Prajanti Mam Dradavrata. This is very interesting. It says, Yesham Twandagatam Papam. One has to be freed of all sinful activities. Punya karma. One has to be executing devotional service too. Punya karma, you know, transcendental payaka. One has to be freed from dualities too. Dualities like I and mine, pleasure and pain. And then Vajanti Mam Drita, then one can actually be absorbed in Krishna consciousness with determination. So that's really what it means. Good question. So, okay, who else has a question? Any questions here?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Yes, yes.
Rishikesh, okay. What's your question?
Uh, Gurudev, generally it says, devotional service is really bestowed by the devotees of Krishna. But here the Lord bestowed devotional service to these kings, He benefited them that you will be attached to my devotional service. He gave
Yeah,
him bhakti directly. So in this
yes.
case, I think the Lord also can give the bhakti also, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, so there's several things we have to understand by this. First of all, in certain cases, the Lord can be directly a guru. But in this particular case, we also understand that all these kings had their own gurus too. I mean, we don't really have so much information of the king's history, but they were obviously devotees, and they had obviously taken instruction from other devotees, so they had the mercy of devotees, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to uh, connect to Krishna in such a fashion. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep. Yeah,
So,
it makes sense,
so
Gurudev.
obviously they were, you know, it's not mentioned here who their guru was. And even if they didn't have a guru, and I assume they did have gurus before they got entrapped by Jarasandha, but even if they didn't, let's say theoretically, like Krishna is the guru, Krishna can become guru directly. He's not restricted from becoming Guru. Like Prabhupada said that for the residents of Vrindavan, Krishna is directly their spiritual master, and Radharani is directly their spiritual master. Whew. That'd be nice, Radharani, spiritual master. Wow. Okay, so nice question. I believe Mahamantra had a question.
It's actually Jagat Guru, Srila Gurudev.
Oh, Jagat Guru.
We're watching together.
Okay.
I was wondering if you knew the story of Nahusha's fall down, King Nahusha.
Yeah, Nahusha, it's there in the Mahabharata, the story of King Nahusha's fall down, that Nahusha became, well, it's really interesting that one time Indra had to lose his position because he had committed an offense, or he killed, actually, Vritrasura. Sorry. And so Nahusha was actually appointed to be the next Indra. I'm going to try to tell the story real quickly because it's quite a long story. And Nahusha said, I'll agree to come Indra if I can actually have everyone, if anyone, all the demigods' power, and everyone tries to attack me, I'll absorb their power. Nobody able to defeat me. So he became king, or Indra, King Indra. And so he became very proud when he became the Indra, and he decided he wanted to enjoy with Sachi, who was Indra's wife, who was feeling separation from Indra. And so Sachi took shelter of Brahaspati. Brahaspati said, I'll try to protect you. Eventually, he told her to go to Nahusha and tell Nahusha that she would agree to be with him, but she had to have more time to find her husband. So she went and looked and looked and looked and found Indra in the stem of a lotus flower on the Earth planet, hiding out. And Indra sort of gave her the instruction that you should agree to be with Nahusha only if he comes riding to see you on a palanquin carried by the Sapta Rishis, the 7 great Rishis. So Nahusha agreed with that and said, oh, no problem. He engaged the Sapta Rishis. And what happened is that he got very angry when they had an argument, and he put the palanquin was put down for some time, and he had an argument with Agastya, and he kicked Agastya Muni, and Agastya cursed him, and he became a snake on the Earth planet, and he left the heavenly planets, and he fell down in that particular way. Ultimately, he was saved by Yudhisthira Maharaj because, as a snake, a big serpent on the Earth planet, he had captured Bhimsen, and it was described that he would be liberated when defeated philosophically by Yudhisthira, and Yudhisthira was able to talk to him philosophically, and then he went back to the heavenly planets and he was humble. Okay? Phew. It's a long story.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the story of Nahusha's fall down. That's in the Mahabharata, that whole story. It's an interesting story. When we take birth, our consciousness also grows as body grows, but the soul is eternal, so what is the link between mind and body and soul? Example, intellect level of young boy will be different to old age person. Well, the consciousness in essence is the same, but the let's say the brain develops. Okay, let's talk about the brain, which is not the mind, not the body and the soul, but it's the part of the body. Sorry, and the brain is like the filter of consciousness. So as the filter becomes more developed, then consciousness can be manifest in different ways. Although the consciousness of a living entity is the same. So anyway, let's see, one other question, because it's time. Gurudev, Lord Krishna forgave Sishbal's 100 offenses. How about our offense to Krishna? How many of ours can be forgiven? That's a good question. Sishbal was his fourth birth. Fourth birth? It was his second birth. Actually, third birth, sorry. Third birth. And I'm here from time immemorial. Yep. Krishna will forgive you. because you have Lord Chaitanya's mercy. But don't take advantage of it. Okay, on that happy note, we should end. Thank you very much. All glories to His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada.